Welcome! You are watching episode 24 of the Mobility Talks, the web series by EIT Urban Mobility, and today we'll be looking at zero-emission mobility in cities. What is the plan? And there are many plans. I don't know about you, but sometimes I get a little bit lost in translation, or should I say lost in ambition, when it comes to all the climate plans and pledges and targets that we hear about. And for sure, targets are an important driver of policy. When they are legally binding, they place obligations on various stakeholders to achieve their own goals and make their own contribution to the overarching strategy. But when it comes to cities, covering only 4% of the EU's land area, but who are home to 75% of EU citizens, there is a sense that every city is a world of its own, and even more importantly, they represent the expression of public space. And top marks to those of you who can guess which is the city in this video. Let us know in the comments if you can guess which city this is. But the challenge is to create changes in public space while accommodating for the needs and aspirations of the majority of inhabitants, businesses, and civil society. And mobility, of course, plays a crucial role here. And the question is this what we aspire to? Luckily, we are joined by an excellent lineup of speakers who will be bringing different perspectives to the table. But there is another important group attending today, and that is you, the audience. So I'd like to take this moment to introduce you to yourselves. We received more than 160 registrations for today's event, with participants coming from over 40 countries with a lot of interest from Europe, but also participants from around the world. And I would like to give you a warm welcome wherever you're joining from, whatever time zone you are joining from. This time we also had a lot of interest from public authorities, whether on local, national, European, or even international level. And our goal is to make this discussion as practical as possible, so you can all start implementing ambitious sustainability plans for urban mobility in the cities that you live in, work for, or wish to be a part of. So do get involved in the chat and raise your questions to speakers. I'll be monitoring the Q&A tab, I'll be monitoring the chat, and I will be raising all of this with our speakers as the conversation unfolds. We want to make this session informative and useful for you. The best way to do that is to get involved and ask your questions. So without further ado, let's get straight down to it. We'll first start with a general overview of the NetZeroCities program. And I am delighted to welcome Anna Huttunen, who is City Advisor at the ZeroCities mission. She will be talking about mobility, and mobility is an important part of getting to net zero in cities, but she'll also be giving us the picture of how cities are approaching their net zero ambitions more generally. Anna, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you so much. Very happy to be here today with all of you.
The floor is yours, Anna, please.
Thank you. And the time is running, so I will get into it. If the slide was changing. Okay, it's working. Little technical problem in the beginning, as usual. So my name is Anna Huttunen, and I'm the Climate Neutral City Advisor for the NetZeroCities. I'm employed by the Climate Kick, and we are coordinating the whole NetZeroCities consortium, consisting of more than 30 organizations. And maybe as a little start and background, since we also have a lot of participants from all over the world, which is amazing. What we do within the NetZeroCities, we are supporting the 112 cities that were chosen to the EU mission on climate neutral and smart cities. These 112 cities all around Europe and 12 of them from the associated countries share the same ambition. Their ambition is to become carbon neutral by 2030. And as we all know, it's a very challenging goal. The ambition is huge, but the ambition is also the most important thing. And of course, another important thing is that the cities now in the front as part of the 112 cities, they will be also sharing the learnings that they gain from their climate neutrality journey to other cities in Europe and also, of course, beyond. And we at the NetZeroCities, we are the platform. We support these 112 cities on their journey towards the climate neutrality. And a little bit about what we do with the cities. So you might think that a platform is something physical. Yes, we also have a NetZeroCities portal, which is actually accessible for each and every one of you who want to join. In the end, you will also see a slide about that. But we have a lot of support for the cities that are part of the missions. For instance, myself, I'm a city advisor. I work with 10 of the cities involved in the mission. And I also have plenty of colleagues that, of course, add on to the support that we give to the cities. On systemic thinking, on transition teams, how should you create the ecosystem that helps you to transform the city? Stakeholder engagement, which of course is extremely important, whatever we now do in the cities. Financing, funding, etc., investment planning, which is becoming more and more important topic, of course, in the cities. We also have winter and summer schools and spring school. I'm actually dialing in from Stockholm, where we are now with more than 30 of our cities in a spring school, where we really all face-to-face do peer-to-peer learning and address these issues and topics that all cities have to work on. And then we also have policy labs throughout the program on different topics. They're especially addressing the policy topics on EU level, but of course, all has relation also to the national and local level going forward. Within the NetZeroCities, we also have the Pilot Cities program. We have already selected 2 cohorts of pilot cities. The first cohort included also 4 non-mission cities, but then we have 2 more calls that are aimed for the mission cities to come also pilot cities. And the third one we just had. And on top of that, we have a twinning program, which is currently we have the second call open. So please, all European cities, check into that and maybe apply, because that's a great possibility to then learn from the pilot cities that we have within the NetZeroCities platform. And then next I will go a little bit deeper to the process, the tool, and also the document that the cities that are as part of the city's mission have to produce. And before that, I just want to state that, of course, in all that we do in cities, with the cities, all the stakeholders in the city, I think everyone acknowledge that the cities cannot do it alone. You need everyone on board. So the deep collaboration is really the key. Bringing in different stakeholders, bringing in the citizens, bringing in the academia to do the transformation together. I think there is never too much or enough knowledge that can help us to the needed transformation. And the model that the cities choose for the ecosystem, for the transition team, whatever you want to call it, as you approach in your climate journey, it's up to you. And every city is different. And of course, the constellation is also different. So this is the Climate City contract that I mentioned. And the Climate City contract, it's a tool, it's a process. It's also a document with 3 interlinked components. So the cities within the mission, also Den Haag, who will be talking after me, they have to produce the Climate City contract with a commitment demonstrating the stakeholder engagement, the city engagement, and also multi-level governance engagement. So we also encourage and foster the multi-level governance within the climate city contract process. There is also the action plan where the city should state their journey to climate neutrality, create the impact pathways. How do you will actually get there? Not only concentrating on the actions and the results, but also what has to change in the city in order to get there, and what are the co-benefits that we will receive because of the transformation that's happening in the city. And also the Climate City Action Plan should, of course, also address the barriers, but also the opportunities that there are in different governance level for the climate transition. And then the third part that we have is the investment plan. And this is usually the new part for the cities that are even involved in the city's mission. So in the investment plan, the cities really need to do a big exercise. They need to create an economic case for the city. What will it take to become carbon neutral by 2030? What kind of investments will we need? And who is responsible for these investments? Of course, the city can only address maybe 10%. The rest of the assets are owned by citizens and businesses. And again, we need everyone on board. And of course, you might ask, like, okay, why are the cities doing this? Why are they doing the climate city contract? Of course, it's because of really creating new processes, maybe adding another layer to the already being processes that the cities have. We, of course, have a lot of cities that are advanced in their climate action, but we also think that everyone has something to learn. There are always something to learn from each other, something to share with other cities, and this is also a tool for that. And then there is the EU emission label that the cities that will be accepted who succeed in their climate city contract receive the EU Mission Cities label. And it's an acknowledgement of the Mission Cities plan to climate neutrality. And so for 33 European cities, 33 cities, mission cities have received the label. And of course, the job doesn't stop there after receiving the label. Now we go into the implementation with these cities. One thing that I want to mention is that we bring in the cities to the Cities Mission Capital Hub, where we support them on advisory, how to create new ways of financing, funding, what kind of technical advisory they might need, etc. So this is definitely something very interesting for all the cities that receive the label and then continue their work into the implementation. And like I mentioned in the beginning, we have the NetZeroCities portal, which is a one-shop stop, useful for any city, so regardless of where you are. And you should join, check out all the resources, more is coming, and start the journey with the NetZeroCities over there. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna, for giving us this overview. It looks like you're, on the one hand, creating a community. At the same time, you have developed some kind of a blueprint or a roadmap for cities to get on board. And then there's the whole implementation phase, because it doesn't just stop at an intention. It's also then implementing. And you mentioned also the investment plan. So that'll be a few things that'll be interesting to get into in the conversation. So stay with us, Anna.
Definitely.
Okay. Brilliant. So, as you mentioned, indeed, we will now hear from The Hague, a more specific example then within this broader community of how a city is transforming. So we will hear now from Bregtje Bax. She is Senior Policy Advisor for Sustainable Mobility at the City of The Hague. So, Bregtje, can you give us a sense of how you are implementing, how you are developing these policies on the local level?
Yes, I can tell something about that. As Anna told you, The Hague is one of the 100 climate neutral and smart cities. We just submitted our climate city contract a few weeks ago, and we are waiting for a response if it's okay. And in the meantime, we are working on a lot of projects that will help us get to this ambition of climate neutral, emission-free mobility. But first, I would like to tell you something about The Hague, what kind of city it is. It's the third largest city of the Netherlands, with over 560,000 residents. It's densely built and populated, so there is a lot of mobility going on in the city. The map on this slide shows you which kind of public transport corridors we are working on to hopefully let all these people, the residents, the people that are living and working in The Hague, let them travel in a sustainable way. But that is quite a challenge, and we have this ambition to become climate neutral, but we don't know all the answers yet. So the next couple of years we are going to test a lot of things, and knowledge sharing with all the other European cities will help us to gain more insights. And my clicker is not working right now. Right, some facts and figures of The Hague. The CO2 emissions of The Hague are shown in this figure on the right-hand side. The green part is the part from mobility. 12% of the CO2 emissions are traffic related. And because we are this densely populated, we also have high car ownership. 43% of the car trips in The Hague is short distance, less than 5 kilometers. But we believe that we can provide a lot of different alternatives for all these car trips that are so short distance. There's also traffic safety to think about. Cars are taking up much more space, so that is also another thing to think about. The mobility vision of The Hague has several objectives, and sustainable mobility is a large part of that. So our overall mobility vision on a strategy towards a mobility transition, it looks into clean mobility, affordable mobility. It should be customized for each group in the city, become much more efficient, but also connected to the regional level, the national level, and the international level. And safety, traffic safety is a big objective for us as well. But if I focus on sustainable mobility, then we have 3 types of measures that we are working on. It's reducing the number of car trips, and especially the short car trips that I was talking about. Also reducing the number of cars in the city. The second type of measure, the second pillar, is working on a model shift by creating a better position for pedestrians and for cyclists within the mobility system, and also by improving the public transport corridors. And that is also more long-term, because you don't build a public transport corridor in one day. And also focusing on zero-emission vehicles. We believe that those 3 types of pillars are necessary to reach our ambitions as soon as possible. And it has to do with the reduction of the emissions, but also with changing your spatial design. and to give more room for other types of modes of transport. Then I will get into some examples from the city of The Hague. So since this month we have the Hague Climate Agreement. We made this climate agreement with various stakeholders in the city, and it contains several climate deals with these stakeholders to accelerate our ambition to become climate neutral. And I mentioned two examples of climate deals. One is with the largest employers in The Hague to stimulate sustainable commuting to and from work. Those traffic flows are a substantial part of the traffic in The Hague, and it could lead to a potential 4 to 18% CO2 reduction. And many large employers would like to provide their employees with other alternatives, also because there's a lot of road work near the city, but also the other cities and the highways in the Netherlands, and public transport could be a good alternative for them. And the second climate deal that I would like to mention is a collaboration with residents' organizations to assist in shared car cooperatives. And these shared car cooperatives are basically neighbors that would like to share a car and don't own a car anymore. And by sharing it, it becomes more affordable, and they have control over what they would like to have, what kind of car they would like to have. And we would like to provide this type of shared car cooperatives in all the city neighborhoods, not only in the more rich areas, but also for people with a lower income. And then I have a last slide with some other projects we are working on. We are working on new trams that will increase capacity and improve accessibility for elderly. So the new type of trams have more space and are easily accessible. We are starting a pilot to make a public transport free of charge for children up to 11 years old. We are implementing several mobility hubs in the city for shared e-cargo bikes that are also electric. We have many cycling lessons for children and adults that need the help, the assistance to learn how to cycle. Other types of projects I would like to mention for logistics, the zero-emission zone that we are implementing in 2025. And we are increasing our charging infrastructure for electric cars. On a yearly basis, we add 400 additional charging stations. So that's just to give you a first overview of what we are doing in the city of The Hague. But we are not there yet.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much for sharing that. There are a couple of questions, and I think I'm going to at least try and raise one, and we'll see where we get to. The first one is on the emissions. So you mentioned that 12% of the CO2 emissions in the city is traffic related, and 43% of car trips are less than 5 kilometer trips. So do you know how much those less than 5 kilometer trips by car account for in the total CO2 emissions? Out of that box of 12%, how much is that kind of really short trip? Do you have any idea?
Oh, I'm sorry, I don't have that on the top of my head. No, I don't.
Okay, and then about the shared micromobility vehicles, like how big is the offer in The Hague, and is there any kind of incentive towards things like carpooling and things like that?
Yeah, we have many different distributors for the micromobility, and we have these type of contracts that they can deliver these e-cargo bikes. But we try to have really good conditions for this, so that it will really benefit people instead of giving more, taking up more space. I don't have the exact numbers right here, but yeah, I could get back to you on that. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing this overview of The Hague and some of the projects you're working on. We'll now look at something a little bit different, which is energy sources. And so I will now go to Joan Cardona. He is Business Development Manager for Railway and Logistics at Eurecat. And you've been working, Joan, on a study related to hydrogen and the role of hydrogen in urban mobility. So maybe you can say something about that. Over to you, Joan.
Thank you, Jean-Paul. Thank you, everybody, to be here. I'm really glad to be here with you, explaining our experience in the role of hydrogen in urban mobility. This is a study conducted for the EIT Urban Mobility KIC. Okay. And first of all, I want to shortly introduce what is Eurecat. Eurecat is a technology center based in the northeast of Spain, located in Barcelona region. Okay, we are a multi-technology center, so we are dealing with different technologies applied in different markets. In this case, applied to mobility and urban mobility. Okay. So I will share with you some results of this project. Okay, first of all, for this project and all kinds of projects, we have to know which is the policy framework. Okay, here you have some policies, some European policies applied to hydrogen. I won't go through it because it makes no sense. But you have here a basic overview of this European policy framework. Okay, going to other things more important, which is the role of hydrogen in urban mobility right now. Okay. We have to take into account that currently hydrogen production is based on fossil fuels. So, as you can see here, renewable and low carbon hydrogen remains only below only 1% of the global hydrogen production. So, if we want to use hydrogen as a clean energy source, we have to boost this less than 1% over the total production, over the total hydrogen production. Okay. The expected CO2 emission reduction using clean hydrogen nowadays we foresee that it will be driven by medium duty and heavy duty vehicles. In further slides, we will go deeper in this point. Okay. Nowadays, is also expected to build a new hydrogen refueling station every 2,000 kilometers along the main transport network. This is the deal by 2030. This is a mistake. It's not 2023. It's 2030. Another important point is that the use of existing gas pipelines infrastructures properly adapted to hydrogen can create an extensive transportation network. This is a tendency. This has to be has to be this is not a category, but this pipeline infrastructure can be useful to transport this hydrogen. So this will avoid the construction costs in this case. Okay. Another important point is that nowadays the only zero emission vehicles available are battery electric vehicles and fuel cell based vehicles. Okay. The battery electric vehicles relies on large battery for storage of energy, and on the other hand, the fuel cell vehicles uses small batteries and fuel cell stack to produce energy. Okay. And as I said before, battery electric vehicles and fuel cell vehicles can only be environmental beneficial using carbon neutral source of production. Okay, so this 1% of global hydrogen production using renewable and low carbon sources have to be really boosted. Here I have put you some comparison between battery electric vehicles and fuel cell vehicles. I leave it for you for literature. Okay. Uptake potentials of hydrogen in transportation. As you can see here in this slide, road vehicles, the use of hydrogen in road vehicles is mainly based in trucks and buses, okay, because of high annual mileage and heavy weight. In trains, we see the use of hydrogen only where electrification is difficult and the distances are too far to be covered by battery electric trains. And in maritime market, the use of hydrogen is increasing. Now is really low, but the hydrogen use is increasing. Although the maturity of the technologies, which is less mature than the other sectors like road and rail. Okay, and here I wanted to highlight some points about the use of hydrogen in public transport. The pros are that hydrogen is applicable to buses, trams, and trains because the zero emission profile and the similar autonomy range compared to conventional powered equivalents, and the capacity to store excess energy from renewable sources. Okay, but the main cons is the initial infrastructure costs. Okay, here you can see the pyramid of market size, okay, and some niches. Here you have for your literature, which is the pathway to hydrogen's potential in urban mobility, taking into account hydrogen supply, storage, transportation, public transport, private transport, and micromobility. Here you will see some beneficials and some bottlenecks. Okay, I'm going to do it quickly because I'm running out of time. Here you have a comparison for public transport and commercial fleets, passenger vehicles, and micromobility. As you can see in blue bars, you have the hydrogen potential market. In public transportation, in the top of the column, you have the market comparison for buses, then the truck market comparison, and finally at the bottom we have the taxi market comparison. As you can see here, taxi is not a market that have to be take into account almost now, but buses and trucks have a long very good market for the future. Okay, and for passenger vehicles, as you can see in these figures, the market size is expected to be really low compared to electric vehicles. Okay. Here you have some use cases in urban mobility. I leave it to you for your literature. Okay. And this is an important slide because these are the remaining bottlenecks for the adoption of hydrogen-based solutions in urban mobility. I would say, for example, in production, the lack of dedicated regulatory framework, I think is the most important. In transportation and storage, the lack of dedicated regulatory framework too, okay? End-use supply, the lack of coherence, alignment to ensure flow investments, and no differentiation between different types of hydrogen refueling stations. About public perception and social acceptance, there is a lack of knowledge causing uncertainty and concerns about hydrogen safety. This is a major concern. About cost and affordability, I would say that the most important bottleneck is the limited research on willing to pay for hydrogen emissions-free public transportation. About safety, the main bottleneck is the apprehensions towards the storage and transportation of green hydrogen. And finally, about the supply chain and procurement, I would say that the most important bottleneck is the infrastructure for hydrogen production, storage, and transportation. As conclusions, hydrogen is a versatile and clean energy carrier and can be produced by renewable and non-renewable sources. As I said before, now renewable or low carbon sources is less than 1%. I have to keep it in mind. The efficiency energy storage vector, hydrogen can storage intermittent renewable energy for use when needed. This is a very important point. The hydrogen for mobility is what we said before. Buses and vans and trucks and integrated into mobility fleets is okay, but not for trains where it can be electrified very easy. And maritime, nowadays the use is very low, but it's increasingly. Okay. About the fuel cells vehicles, I said it before, pros and cons: fast charging, long autonomy, and minimal emissions. And the cons is the cost of green hydrogen production, the transportation, storage, and distribution. So also the challenges inherent to new technologies. Okay, which are the recommendations for the use of hydrogen in public transportation? We say that the development of conducive policy environment to foster an ecosystem to encourage and support adoption of hydrogen-based solutions. Another important point is the public-private partnership to invest in refueling infrastructure. Another important thing is the concerns about safety. And the collaborative research focus on enhancing the scalability, the efficiency, the environmental sustainability of hydrogen production. And finally, the effort to inform, to engage, and to empower the public. Finally, I only want to highlight that a website will be available in the next weeks, where you will find all these outcomes of the project, and where you will also have different services where from Eurecat we can help you to implement the hydrogen source of energy. Okay, So thank you very much for your patience, and sorry for my delay in the presentation.
Thank you, Joan, and yeah, you're bringing in the energy sources, the alternative fuels, which is also part of the way cities will be transforming. During the conversation, feel free to also bring in some other points of view. Okay, and we'll now go to another kind of energy source to some extent with Tomas Grönqvist. He is the founder and CEO of MIOO or MIOO, an award-winning platform driving increased cycling with over 30,000 users. So the power of the muscle. Tomas, over to you. Give us a sense of, how are we getting people to get more into cycling in cities?
Yeah, thank you for having me. And my story is that I started out 10 years ago as a mobility management consultant, where many of my projects involved developing cycling as mode of transportation. I've been working with cities, constructors, real estate owners, and the Swedish government to improve better cycling here in Sweden. And most of my previously projects were about planning for better cycling infrastructure and improving bicycle parking facilities. But in one study we conducted to identify factors that could boost cycling on a broad scale, we revealed that besides improved infrastructure, many potential cyclists lacked a functional bike. So we found out that 40% of existing bicycles remained unused due to minor issues such as a flat tire. And that's how we came up with the idea of MIOO. And MIOO is an abbreviation for My Bike, and it's a platform for bicycles and bike users. And each bike is connected to user like a digital passport and get a unique identity with a digital service book where all information about the bike and its history is recorded. Through the platform, users can book services through local verified service providers and add insurance and anti-theft protections. We are also at the moment working on a feature where you can sell your bike directly through the platform as second-hand with all documentation about the bike already in place and 2 clicks away. Currently, MIOO have over 30,000 registered users, and we are at this point operating a profitable business here in Stockholm. Our mission is to be an enabler for active mobility in our cities. So just like Google enables finding information or LinkedIn enables finding a new job, we want to make it easy and accessible for people to use their bike in their everyday life. The interesting part, as we have gained some traction, is actually our users. Our users are the ones making a real impact here. Just in Stockholm, MIOO users collectively bike 220,000 kilometers every day. And from an impact perspective, this translates to societal benefits in form of better environment and health worth over 200,000 euro per day. And this is only MIOO users and only in Stockholm. So if we take this perspective and start measuring and demonstrate the true value of cycling for society, we believe it's perfect timing to start taking cycling and active mobility more seriously as one of the most important tools to reach net zero in our cities. Thank you.
Brilliant, thank you, Tomas. Clear message there on the potential for the uptake of cycling, and it'll be interesting maybe also to discuss with you aspects around how replicable is your kind of model there in other parts of Europe and things like that. So that's something we can get stuck in, and I'd like to actually move to the discussion, get all the panelists on board. Can we show them up? Brilliant. Thank you so much for given us, a first overview of your perspectives on these complex issues. Every city is a kind of universe in itself. There are a lot of crisscrossing factors influencing many things in a city. So it's not actually that easy to me to understand, what is the golden plan to net zero. And all of you are working, anticipating the future. And regardless of the quality of the models and the quality of the data, the future is always probably going to look a little bit different to what you might expect or anticipate. So my first question to you actually is, what are the main knowledge gaps that you are facing in the development of these strategies? I'd like to maybe turn to you first, Anna, because you mentioned in your presentation that there is never enough knowledge. So that means there are many knowledge gaps. What are the main ones that you've come across or that you've had feedback from cities in your experience working with the different climate city contracts? What are the main knowledge gaps that you're facing?
Yeah, I guess, like I said, there is never enough knowledge. And that's for all of us here, and also, I guess, on the other side of the screen, the main work to do with the cities. I think there are a few things that we could start with. Since within the climate city contracts, we work with the cities in order to really create this holistic approach of the challenges that they're facing in their climate neutrality journey. So transportation and mobility is also a topic that we should really look holistically. We should look at through different lenses, through different sectors. We should look at the nature-based solutions. We should look at the land use. We should look at energy systems when we talk about transportation and mobility. And we also should really think about the changes that need to happen in the city in order to reach the result that we want to reach. And maybe as an example, what we start to see in the climate city contracts that have received the label is that, for instance, electrification, it's popping up everywhere, of course, but it should not be looked as the only solution, because we have to do everything aside it. The electric vehicle will not be the silver bullet that saves everything. We really need to look into active mobility and logistic improvements as well. And then maybe one more thing that I would like to raise, which I think is extremely important. We work with the cities a lot on the co-benefits that they should receive through the climate actions that they are doing. And I think we still need a lot more knowledge on how to monetize the co-benefits, the different co-benefits related to health, related to citizens, related to satisfaction, related to culture creation, job creation, etc., and some kind of models and even better impact assessments, so that every city has a model like this to use. Maybe to start with those.
Yeah, that sounds like already quite a few, knowledge gaps or issues to be improved on. But Bregtje, maybe you can step in here with your example in The Hague, and obviously you can build on what Anna said, but I would also be particularly interested on a practical level. You probably also experience some amount of maybe rebound effects from certain measures that you're implementing, and that creates, open knowledge to be found, And so, what kind of knowledge gaps have you found on a local level?
Yes, I think it is really important to think about what works for the people that live and work in our city, because they are the ones that we need to convince to travel in a more sustainable way. And what is holding them back? So we need the right conditions for people to change their behavior. There's nothing else to do about it. And there are many studies about this, how to change behavior, but I think one of the most important aspects is affordability. Also for people with lower incomes, how do you make sure that the investments that you are making in your city are equally profitable for all the people that live in our city? And also, I agree with Anna about looking at it not from one sector, but working together with the other work fields. in our municipality. So that's why we are working with the colleagues of energy transition, with the colleagues of a circular economy, of built environment, because all the number of houses and office buildings we are placing in the city right now, it affects the way mobility works. Innovation is one thing, but we also need to think about what do we need to reduce to get the right results. So it should be a balance of using carrots and sticks.
Okay, yeah. So it's all about, you know, understanding how to accompany behavior change so that people are, you know, willingly entering into a new way of doing things, of moving around the city, and it has to be, you know, affordable. You mentioned, so
Yes.
I understand that piece. If I go to Joan, I mean, you briefly talked about the regulatory aspect, right? Because you didn't want to go through the full legislative package. But it's true that you know, when we look at energy, is that one of the big kind of knowledge gaps? You know, what will be the regulatory frameworks of the future for different energy sources, different fuels, and what will be allowed, not allowed, in what circumstances? And this might be a very changing picture. Is that a big knowledge gap, actually, the regulatory framework?
Is one of the most important gap, because in hydrogen technology, for example, there is a very big gaps or very big challenges in order to how to produce more green hydrogen, how to storage this hydrogen, how to transport this hydrogen in low emission. Okay, but the regulatory is very important and it is not clear. But it is not clear in hydrogen. It is not clear in low emission energy sources, but also is not clear in other technological fields. Okay, so when you are facing changes, when facing new technologies, first the technology arrives to the market, and then the regulations arrives. So here you have a gap. You have a delay between regulation and technology. So yes, now the regulations is a really well-known, not well-known field. Yeah, there's a lot of things to do in this regulation. As you can see in my first slide of the presentation, all the existing regulations started in 2020, so it's 3.5 years ago. So it's the only regulation about hydrogen is really new.
Yeah, and so that's one part of the puzzle. And if we continue the puzzle, then going back to Tomas, I mean, you're in the business, let's say, of behavior change towards cycling.
Yep.
So maybe can you actually say something about, are there any knowledge gaps that would still justify the lack of understanding as to why cities might not be pushing more cycling? So is there any knowledge gaps on the value, let's say, of cycling towards, you know, net zero mobility in cities as one part? And then what are your knowledge gaps in actually developing even more, even further cycling with your system?
Yeah, like a bicycle trip per se is already made at net zero, right? And from my perspective, I primarily see one important knowledge gap that cycling platforms like MIOO can help to fill in. A recently published study from Statistics Sweden was observed that over 30% of Swedish people have less than a 50-minute bike ride to their workplace. And what we also would like to see is to fill in the gap. Fill the gap is to incorporate big data on how cyclists move in real time. And I think this is crucial for prioritizing where cities and traffic planners should build their cycling infrastructure and where to allocate funds. And gathering this data on the amount of cycling is also important to find political arguments to plan and invest for better cycling in the future. By the end of the day, mobility is about moving people and not vehicles, really. And since the bicycle takes up a tiny little space compared to a car with one person in, I believe we need to better illustrate the potential for moving people as efficiently and as sustainable as possible, practically.
Okay, brilliant. So that's a first perspective on some of the knowledge gaps. I'd also like to talk about the main drivers that accelerate, the transition in cities towards net zero mobility. EIT Urban Mobility launched a poll, actually on LinkedIn in preparation of this episode of the Mobility Talks. Can we put up the results of the poll, please? So the question was, as we approach 2050, achieving zero-emission mobility is crucial for a sustainable future, but what is the most critical factor to accelerate this transition? Out of 150 votes, the biggest factor that was polled was government incentives and policy. Second came infrastructure development. Third was public awareness. And lastly, technological innovation in electric vehicles. I'd like to ask our colleagues here, our panelists, which one would you have chosen, Anna, of these four? Would it be more infrastructure, government incentives, public awareness, or technological innovation?
I think I have to say that I agree with the majority of the poll. So I think infrastructure development is always very important, especially when it comes to cycling and walking. Also public transport, when you build it, they will come right. And as in the NetZeroCities, we also very much foster the multi-level governance. And so I think government incentives and policies, also what Joan already addressed on regulatory frameworks, etc., they are extremely important. And I think because behavior change, it will be more likely to happen if you do the other things, if you have the infrastructure on place, if you have the incentives that support this. Yeah, I think I do agree on this. But of course, all the cities, like you said in the beginning, Jean-Paul, is that the cities are very different they function in very different ways. They organize their ways of working in a very different way. So we also need to look at each city as an individual city, but of course there are some things that apply for many of the cities, and it depends also on the power, how much the municipality, for instance, when it comes to transportation, has the decision power on their street network, on their public transport, and how much they work together with the regions. And then on the other hand, what's the role of the national government when it comes to, for instance, road pricing, road tolls, congestion charging, etc. So yeah, this was a very long answer, but I kind of got into the loop. Happy to give the floor to someone else now.
And you agree as well with the general answers. Maybe I can go to Joan actually, because technological innovation was the last one that was polled, and that's the one that you were raising. So do you agree or disagree with that?
I don't agree with the question, because you have asked about innovation in electric vehicles. So if you put aside electric vehicles, I think that innovation will be higher in the pool, because I agree with the first position is regulatory and policy and incentives. Okay, but to establish the infrastructure, you have to first innovate. You have to first do the research. So when the technology is ready, then you can go to build the infrastructure. but not in the inverse way. So and as Thomas said before, they use, or they have a lot of data, so they can use big data, or they can use artificial intelligence algorithms to know the behavior of the people, and to advise people to use their solution, their mobility solution. Okay, so yeah, I suggest that innovation have to be more on the top, but not for electric vehicles, but as a wide range. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And Bregtje, how would you respond to that question? Which one would you be highlighting as the main factor?
I would be highlighting government incentives, of course, because we have the most influence on that one. But also because I see the importance of, for example, parking policy in a city. By reducing the number of parked cars in your streets, you can make much more space for green and healthy streets, livable streets where people can meet each other and children can play on the streets. So that's one major policy that I think will help our city a lot. Yes.
Okay, and Thomas.
And also, I also read some studies about people saying that they know which type of transport is more sustainable, but they still choose to have a car because it's more comfortable, it's easier when you have children. There are a lot of reasons to choose a car, but they are basically saying if the government would be more steering us towards the right choices, then we would make another choice. So that's an interesting thought as well.
Yeah, are you suggesting there might be some contradiction sometimes between what we aspire to and what we actually do? Well, I suppose
exactly.
that might be fair enough. You know, I mean, we are human after all, full of contradictions. Thomas, what would be your answer? What would be the main, accelerator?
Yeah, I think infrastructure development are where we want to reach. Like Anna said, if you build it, they will come. But I think everything starts with public awareness to then become government and city incentives and policies. If we better can show the public facts and data and modeling scenarios, it would help us to faster adapt a public net zero mindset, I believe, and speed up the governments and cities to implement incentives and policies that will transform our cities by more net zero infrastructure.
You're actually echoing a comment in the chat here that's saying that they're very interested in communication provided to citizens, and that the more we know as citizens about what is happening and being achieved in cities, the more then we can sort of feel committed to those objectives and share the same values. So that kind of echoes what you're saying. I think that's quite interesting. And as we're talking about the acceleration, that is another part of the equation, which is the dates that used to feel a little bit far away, actually getting closer and closer. I mean, in the NetZeroCities program, it's basically 2030. There are kind of maybe more legally binding objectives, say by 2050. But anyway, the time frame is getting shorter. And so the speed of change is becoming more of a question. And maybe I'd like to start with you, Bregtje, because in a way it hits much closer to home when you're on the local level, right? How do you deal with that speed of change? I mean, and there are two things here. One is, would you like to have a couple of silver bullets, to be honest, that you just step in, make a radical decision that creates a radical change in your city? I mean, is that the kind of thing that you would be hoping for? And the other part of the question that I would like you to address is, how do you go about making arbitrary choices? Because I think that's like a methodology in itself. You know, you can't make all choices at once. You know, you have to kind of decide. So on those two aspects, can you try and give us a sense of how you approach that?
Yes, well, about your first question, I would rather take a little bit more time to get everyone on board and find solutions that are affordable for everyone, that don't exclude certain groups of people in our city, than having a silver bullet and forcing people in certain areas. Because mobility is one aspect, but we are also thinking about our economy, about the way people can live in our city, and I think if you would like to have a just transition, then you should take enough time for that. But well, actually, the conclusion is we should have started a lot earlier, like 20 years ago. Then we would be able to take smaller steps. So that's a challenge, and I don't have the answer to that exactly. But we are working on a climate dashboard at the moment. We want to finish that at the end of the year, in which we can show the city where we stand with our CO2 emissions, and also which type of measures are necessary to reach our ambition of climate neutrality. And that makes it all much more transparent what kind of investments we need for that, which type of choices we need to make. And then it's also a political question, of course, which choices will be made in the end. But I think it helps us also being a part of this 100 climate neutral and smart cities to have much sharper answers to these questions and how we need to proceed. So the next couple of years, we will work on our own transition pathways, and we don't have the answers on everything, but it helps us. It's a good process for us to work like this.
So maybe Anna can jump in there, because you gave a pretty broad overview of the program, right? But I'm sure there may be a few things you can point to in terms of the methodology. How can cities actually in practice approach these complex choices that they're facing, especially with the speed of change that is required? Are there any recommendations that are coming out from your let's say blueprint or roadmap on how to do this that you can share with the audience?
First of all, I want to say that I agree everything what Bregtje said. And as the cities submit the climate city contracts and they receive the label, we are currently working on developing an implementation strategy, the package that we can work on with each city that has received the label. And like Bregtje was mentioning the investments, and as I also mentioned in the beginning, that's one very important part. So within the Capital Hub, we really sit together with the city and start seeking out of the investment plans. What are the investments that we could help with? What kind of players we could bring into? And for instance, what is the role of private money in the investments in the future? What are the new ways? Because we know that there is money out there, but how do we bring it to the city and help them to actually speed up the transformation? And another thing that we work with the cities, and I think Bregtje can probably agree on this as well, is to really bring the cities together. The peer-to-peer learning, share the good examples. Often it's even better when the cities share the best practices, and really we can help them, the cities, to find each other when we see the climate city contracts, and we work with the cities on the pilots, and we can help them then to start working together, share the learnings, create new partnerships around projects, etc. And of course, then there is the policy aspect, and we organize the policy labs where we bring also the cities as challenge owners to present their policy challenges on different sectors: built environment, transport, construction, circular economy, etc. And there we are also then building up some recommendations how they should be pushed forward in the EU. That's maybe on the general level, little bit of overview.
Okay, thank you. So yeah, again, you're also highlighting the importance of the community, the community of cities there. If I go to Joan and Tomas, I'd like to frame the question a little bit differently, which is, let's imagine we have these investment plans in place, right? So what would be your sort of top 2 or 3 ideas as to how these investment plans, or what they should look like, in order to meet the speed of change that is necessary in cities to reach these objectives? How would you go about advising maybe a city in those terms? Maybe Joan first, you want to have a go?
Yes, well, it's a difficult question because it's very complex. But yes, if we have the investments approval, I suggest to use technology to optimize these investments, to really put the money where it's needed. Okay, so the technology developments have to be ready to build these new infrastructures. They have to be really well studied in order to cover all the necessities. So yes, this is my point of view.
So that would be maybe a little bit the kind of information and the way it's being provided in a kind of climate dashboard. Maybe if I take Bregtje's example, like the kind of technology that allows you to understand what is happening in your city and to anticipate in the best way. Okay, I understand that. And Tomas, what would be your way?
If you use this data in a proper way, nowadays you have really good digital tools like big data, artificial intelligence, and so on, to optimize the investments, to optimize the behavior of the users, and to go for a really net zero city. Okay.
Yeah, I know. Understand. Tomas, what about you? Your thoughts on the investment plan?
Totally agree with Johan, first of all. And from a city and a cycling perspective, I would start, if I had the investment in place, with a complete picture of a network of cycling infrastructure and prioritizing the routes in the network that have the greatest potential to move most people. So at the first point, I would say radical changes. I like what a city like Paris have been quick to implement the last years, which means using existing roads, painting signage, and ensuring that routes are connected to build a full network system of bicycle roads with nodes almost overnight. When the network is in place, then we can work with slow-paced transition, which means digging up roads and transforming them into beautiful cycling and walking boulevards like we can see in Amsterdam, for example. However, I see the same mistakes in many European cities where they rather invest millions in building a perfect segment of a bike lane instead of prioritizing the network first. And that, I would say, will cost us too much time and will not get the best bang for the buck. And this brings us back to the previous point about collecting data to quickly illustrate where priorities should be placed and how this network of infrastructure should look like.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like to stay with you, Tomas, actually, on one more point that's been spoken about, which is this idea of the community of cities. And I'd like to see what your thoughts are in terms of the replicability of projects, right? You've been working on a project, especially in Sweden. How difficult is it to then kind of transfer this kind of knowledge that you've built up, the kind of case study that you have, to other local scenarios. Are there some easy things that can be basically applied everywhere, or is each local context so different that that projects aren't actually that replicable?
Yeah, but if we look at a platform like MIOO, together with the city, could gather big data such as heat maps to see how cyclists acts and moves, and scale up visualizations in real time. And we ensure that every new city MIOO would be implemented in, we would attract thousands of cyclists only by the simple ability to book a bike service or adding an insurance. So we already have a great proof of concept on how to gain traction, and the next step would be to replicate this city by city. As an example, there is an ongoing EU-backed project at Royal Institute of Technology here in Stockholm, where I know they are struggling to fill in 1,500 spots to gather usable data on cyclists. And so far, what I know is that they only reached a few hundred. So instead, if the researchers were to use a cycling platform like MIOO, we would have the direct connection to nearly 30,000 cyclists, and allowing the project to focus on data analysis and research rather than increasing user numbers to be able to bring in the data.
Yeah, and maybe Bregtje on this as well, because obviously you're a city that can implement lots of measures. Anna highlighted the importance of the exchange of best practice, and I'm sure you get something of that. But then the reality is that there's so many different ways that cities have autonomy over the decisions they're taking on a local level. In some countries, they have more or less autonomy over other countries for a whole host of reasons. So are things actually so replicable? I mean, aren't you at the end of the day a little bit left alone because of just the geography and the nature of politics? Or are there things that are, fundamental in a way that you can somehow replicate?
Yeah, in a way it's true that every city has its own political dynamics. But I've noticed while talking a lot with other large cities in the Netherlands that we have similar problems and similar solutions. And sometimes we try to work together also by standing together and towards the national government, for example, lobbying for the things that we think are important for our cities. So we work together a lot with Rotterdam, Amsterdam, and Utrecht, for example. And we can find each other in a lot of solutions, but we make our own choices at the end of the day. That's true.
And Anna, actually, that's an important point. It's the capacity then of the community also to weigh in, maybe together, on certain aspects of governance that might actually affect all. I mean, there are certain decisions taken on national level, potentially also European, that affect the ability or the relative autonomy of cities to take decisions. Is that also something that you're working on to gather that community in order to weigh on a broader governance level?
Yeah, definitely. And we see the movement and the work on country platforms around the net zero cities. They are rising. There are some very strong existing ones. For instance, we have one in Spain. We have a rising one in Poland. We have one in Bulgaria. We have one in Greece. Italian cities are working together, German cities are working together. So the role of the national platforms is very important. And of course, in the Nordics, the cities are working very much together in the national platforms, etc. So yeah, I think it really depends on what is replicable. I think if you learn, you can always replicate something. You can use the part that is useful for you, right? I think, for instance, when it comes to cycling infrastructure, everyone looks at the Netherlands and Denmark, and of course you bring in the solutions to your countries, but you need to adapt it to fit in to your local conditions. And that starts, for instance, with winter maintenance in winter countries, etc. You really need to make the big picture and replicate those solutions that fit to your purpose and adapt as needed.
Yeah, and there's not just the politics. I mean, if I go back to Joan's initial intervention, and maybe you can comment on that, Joan, there's also the actual geography, which gives you access to a certain number of energy sources. It might make more sense to go towards some energy sources in some parts of Europe, others in the north and the south, east, west, whatever. Each one will have its own geography, its own picture of that. That will obviously have a major influence. So what is your view? I mean, are there things that can easily be replicable, or is the advice better to kind of focus on your local context, Joan, even just from an energy perspective?
Yes, from the energy perspective and for an overall perspective, I think all all cities and all countries have a baseline, a common baseline problems, and all solutions have some part which is replicable to all or the major part of the cities. But then you have to fine tune the solution to your local conditions. For example, here in Spain, the north part of Spain is really different from the south part of Spain. The north part is really rainy, the south part is really sunny. So you have there different energy sources available. You have different environmental conditions. So following Tomas' mobility solution, it will be more easy to implement this solution in the south part of Spain than in the north part of Spain because of the rainy days, the number of the rainy days, right? So yeah, all solutions have a common baseline replicable to all the cities, but you have to do a fine tuning for each city, for each condition.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much. I think we'll wrap up here. I just maybe would like to get you to, answer very quickly a final question, because we have this kind of bottom line question, which is, what's the plan? I have a feeling there are plans that are there. The question is, are you hopeful? Are you hopeful that these plans will actually be achieved? I'd just like to give a sense, are you more of the optimist or are you more of the slightly frustrated camp? Both are valid, both are valid. So please, let's start with Tomas. Are you the optimist or the more frustrated?
I would say I'm the frustrated optimist then. Since I'm working with my company, I wanted all the time to move faster. So that's my frustration, and also looking out and see how infrastructure could easily be developed overnight here in Stockholm as well. But I would say I'm a totally optimist as well. So.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much for having been with us, Tomas. Joan, are you the frustrated or the optimist?
The optimist, absolutely optimist. We have really wide range of tools available. We have these policies. So yes, really optimist.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you so much for having been with us. Bregtje, over to you. Frustrated or optimist?
I would like to say I'm a realist, and I would answer with that it depends on the choices that we make the coming years. There are still many choices to make, and that will decide if we will make this ambition in time or not. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough. You can go somewhere in the middle. That's also fine. Thank you, Bregtje, for having been with us. And Anna.
I think I would follow a bit on Bregtje and say that I'm an optimistic realistic. person on this, and I think resilience here is the key. I used to say that a lot when I myself worked in a city, because you have this ups and downs. You have to celebrate when you achieve one step forward, because it helps when you get the moment of frustration when things do not go forward. So yeah, but I would, in general, I say I'm an optimist, definitely.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you, Anna. We have the frustrated optimist, we have the optimist, we have the realist, and we have the realist optimist. You know, I mean, that's a great panel. So thank you so much for your insights and your time on this complex topic. You know, and good luck with all your work.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that was a lively discussion. I hope you enjoyed that. I will now hand over to Adrien Moulin. He is Course Development Manager at EIT Urban Mobility. Adrien, I don't know where you would fit in this camp between frustrated and optimist. Maybe you can let us know, and some key takeaways maybe that you get from the discussion. That would be really interesting to hear from you. So over to you, Adrien.
Thank you, Jean-Paul. Well, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, no? Well, I don't know exactly where I would fit, maybe as a happy realistic, but depends a bit on the case, I would suppose. Thanks, Jean-Paul. My name is Adrien. I work for the Academy of the EIT of Mobility, and I will make some short conclusions on today's webinar. First, on behalf of EIT of Mobility, I would like to thank our experts for their contributions today. I picked up a few interesting elements I heard today. So first, on hydrogen, it's a very interesting subject, and very interesting to understand the possible adoption pathways that we saw, and the specific challenges in the urban environment. So it seems complex, but still maybe feasible. And as mentioned many times, it's not only about replacing the energy sources, but also about a modal shift towards cleaner modes, which was broadly discussed today. So from a more planning perspective, we mentioned many different types of levers, for example, how to tackle the short distance trips, and the importance in this sense of walkability and cycling infrastructure. It was very interesting to hear how cycling is actually also finding its business case from a more service perspective and helps making it more attractive and successful. And of course, also the importance of the infrastructure for cycling and of a holistic network, maybe even more than a high quality infrastructure. I find this very, very interesting and relevant. And then also how to tackle the long distance trips more with the public transport and rail systems, and then many different levels. I'm pretty impressed by the diversity of the levels and fields on which we actually need to act to create some impact. We mentioned low emission zones and acting really on the vehicle, but also urban logistics with the importance of cyclo-logistics, which is developing a lot in central areas today, the importance of data, real-time data, governance, regulation, awareness raising, communications. I think we mentioned a lot of topics and fields that we need to act on. Very interesting also the idea that we don't not only act at the planning level or from the planning perspective, but also from that we can work actually with companies or institutions who actually generate mobility. So thinking of the employers and how to work better with employers to improve the commuting of their employees and accompany them or accompany a behavior change, which was mentioned a few times. And then finally, the last discussions, I think, on the speed of change was very interesting. It feels like we need the time to do it well, but we don't really have that time. And also underlining the role of activating the whole ecosystem, including the private sector, which actually often adapts quicker. And finally, then this makes a great transition to our current EIT mobility training portfolio, which actually reflects the diversity of tools that are needed to tackle climate change. So you can see this here on the slide. So we run about, just some information on our portfolio, we run about 40 to 50 training programs, courses per year across Europe. You may have noticed the importance of training and capacity building in the zero-emission cities projects, which we just showed. And we also discussed the importance of the knowledge gap, the important knowledge gap in the field today. So we invite you, maybe this could address these issues in a certain way. So we invite you to visit our webpage called Urban Mobility Courses, UMC in short, .eu, where you will find 3 main products. You can see it on the slide. So e-courses, our e-courses, and Urban Mobility YouTube channel, which are online products which aim at this, which help professionals to discover and explore urban mobility related subjects, and then our applied courses, which are longer courses focusing on specific challenges faced by the industry. If you go to the next slide, please. Yeah, and here you can see some examples of our e-courses, which actually really reflect what was discussed today. We have 2 courses, 2 very interesting courses, one on electrification and one on hydrogen. These are really courses to discover this subject, maybe 4 or 5 hours long, available online. And then on the other subjects, we have courses, for example, on the 15-minute city concept, but also walkability in cities, many courses on cycling infrastructure. And we are developing this year courses on UVARs, which includes low emission zones, cyclologistics, and also a public transport fundamentals course. And yeah, if you go, you can access the webpage to the QR codes. And if you go to the next slide, which is my last slide, and these are examples of our applied courses, usually more in a traditional format on site, but also online, but which all contain a synchronous element and workshops. And here you have examples of our courses on the emission zones, which we developed mainly in Spain and Portugal. We have 3 or 4 courses on cyclologistics taking place in several cities across Europe, and also corporate mobility management, or helping companies to support their employees in their commuting, which we organize in various countries and also replicate them, and hope to replicate them more in the future. So that's it for today. We will now close this webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to contact us through the website or through EIT Mobility. Thanks again to all the experts for taking the time to prepare and join, and thanks Jean-Paul for the great moderation today. Thank you. Bye-bye.